Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I've got a glow. The sun is coming through the lounge window, bouncing off the computer table and lighting me up from underneath. It's also quite dazzling, but it'll only be there for a couple of minutes. And I thought I'd take advantage of the light coming from this way and have a go at the one shelf or rack at a time. Basic principle of this is to just bring each plant over, look it over and chat about how it's done and what I plan to do with it in the coming season, if anything, and what I'd expect from it. So let's get going. And I'm choosing this one here, that one, and I'll do all of it rather than just one shelf because it's there's not many plants on each shelf, so I'll do all of it. That includes quite a few in flower this time as well. But I'm going to start down here. Now in this tray are all my Twinkle types that got ripped off of mounts and put in pots, and they may or may not be doing okay, but they haven't long been done. I wouldn't expect them to do much yet, and I don't know what each one is. We're going to have to wait some time for them to bloom again, but that one's looking okay. It's stayed green, there's no rot on it, it's only 2 bulbs, so we've got to wait a while, but Twinkles can bloom on relatively small plants. So if that can grow a strong new growth and a new root system, then on that next new growth we might get some spikes. But that's Twinkle time is effectively now, November, December for blooming, so we probably have to wait a year. This one is not doing so good, as you can see. This is not a happy plant. It's got virtually no roots and it may not make it. And this little one, this one again isn't doing too bad. None of these had good roots. They got taken off their mounts with hardly any roots. But this one stayed green and it does have a new growth, relatively new growth. So that one's going to make it, but it may take time. This one is a bit of a mess. Now, this has actually got a name. This is basically a Twinkle crossed back with Sotoanum, and there are several around with a name similar to this. It comes out as Oncidium, CQ Marguerite, and it's Chianzi Glory, this one, but there are several like that on the market. There's a few rotten pseudo bulbs here, but whether I can... No, if I try and pull them off, I'm going to pull the plant out of the pot. No, I've got one. But we'll not mess with it too much. Let's wait till it gets some roots and see what it does. But at least there's quite a few bulbs on that one. And this one is a larger one. I think this is actually the species that's not a Twinkle, but it lived with the Twinkles and was mounted with them. I've forgotten the flipping name there. But that one seems okay as well. You know, it's stayed green, it hasn't rotted, and there is, down there, is a tiny little new growth. So, again, it'll make it. And then this one's actually named, this is Tiny Twinkle, and it's always been the one that's done the best for me, but even this one went downhill. But nonetheless, it's a reasonable plant. It's got a failed spike there, so it tried to bloom, and the spike got trapped and didn't come out, and is probably better taken off, but we'll leave it for now. So again, quite a few bulbs. That should pull on, that should recover. So those are all the Twinkle types, and they were just put in this tray because they were easier to manage when I was watering without using the sprayer. When I was picking them up, it was easier to pick the tray up, and that's why they're in there. No other reason, just they're easier to manage as a tray full of small pots. Right, getting on to the bigger ones. This is an anomaly because I've obviously had it a while because it's in one of my pots. At least I think. Do you know, I'm really not sure. I haven't got a clue what this is. I don't think it's long finished blooming, but I can't remember what on earth that is. Whatever it is, it's a biggie, and it's pretty healthy. It's quite happy in this pot. The latest two growths down here have climbed, but the roots did still get down in the pot. Now that one's bloomed, that new lead has bloomed. What about this one round here? Did this one bloom? Yes, that one bloomed as well. And then we've got one here. Did that bloom? Yes, that bloomed. And so did that. So the latest 4 growths on it have bloomed. So it's awaiting new growths now to push on. And it looks like that one is just starting. There's a lump there, so it looks like it may be coming into growth. Now there's just about enough room for that to get down into this pot. But I may well, you see it's all over one side of the pot. And the side of the pot where the new growths come out is the crowded side. This space here is a waste of time. So what this could do with is just gently lifting out of the pot, trying not to disturb the actual roots, and knock the back media off, just that part, and then move the plant back against the pot and put some fresh media down the front of the plant, lowering it down in the pot a bit, and then it gets minimal root disturbance and should push on a lot quicker as a consequence. But it's a nice, strong, healthy plant, that one. And then this one is probably going to come off the shelf and not go back again. It's a Laelonia Joyce Hilton, which will be quite difficult to get again, and all the latest growths have just rotted, every single one. Now it's got some roots and it's got some bulbs with a little bit of plumpness, but it's not a happy bunny. It's a very unhappy Cattleya type. But nonetheless, it's not shrivelling, so I'm just going to give it time. So it gets very little water. I suspect it might be waiting for some heat, but that has nearly been thrown away several times, that one. Not doing very well at all. And the next 3 are my big Miltonias. Now Miltonias are not supposed to look like this. They shouldn't be as pale as this, but nonetheless they bloom better in brighter light. There's a happy balance somewhere. If your leaves are quite a darkish green on your Miltonias, then the chances are they're not quite getting enough light. You might have a nice happy green plant that doesn't bloom very well, or doesn't have as many blooms as it should, that sort of thing. But if you push the light too much, the leaves will go virtually yellow. Now it doesn't kill the plant, it just doesn't look normal. And these have bloomed exceptionally well, which sort of proves the point. But plans for this one, I think this is a project plant, so we've probably already done this one. But the plan for this one is to chop it up, get all the leads away from the plant and repot them centrally so that the next lot of new growths have got plenty of room and not let it bloom next year. That's the plan for that one. And then over here, we've got the same plan for this one. Now this is Spectabilis. This is actually, it's still a hybrid, but it's based on Spectabilis. But it's got something else lurking in there as well. And again, this is in the same boat. It's had too much light. It bloomed incredibly well, and it now needs breaking up, all the older bulbs taken off because they're getting quite shriveled, and getting these new leads into a position where roots get down into some media and get hydrated well in the growing season. So that's the plan for that one, exactly the same as the previous one. They both bloomed really well. For the last 2 years, they can take a year off. And to see whether or not that plan works, This one is a year ahead of those two. So this one was split up and repotted. The pieces were repotted last year, and this year they'll be allowed to grow on. So again, the pieces were all clumped together, pushed to the back of the pot, leaving room for each one of these to produce a new growth in this great big space here. So that's the plan for that one. As I said, this is a year ahead. So these new growths were not allowed to bloom. They were just allowed to push up nice new leaves, get some roots going and mature. The next lot of new growths on that one will be allowed to bloom. Right, I'll pop those back because otherwise I'm going to have no room to put the next shelf as we go. And these Miltonias were on the top shelf purely because their spikes were so long. Now they're going to have to come away from that bright light. So for their growing season next year, they're going back over there somewhere. Yeah, they're not into the dark, but into a lot less light, because that was just too much for them. Far too much, you can tell by the colour. I wish I knew what that one was. It's just completely gone out of my head. And then we'll see if this one will shoot out. It might do. Yeah, it might come back. But if it's waiting for heat, it's got a long wait. Right, just this top shelf then. Now this is Oncidium chirophorum. This is a parent of the Twinkles. One of the parents of the Twinkles. It's got two spikes that have just finished that I'm just going to trim off while I've got it in my mind. And that leaves the one little one still open. I won't be able to focus on that, they're minute. It is slightly fragrant. It would be quite fragrant if it got some bright sort of sunlight through the glass or something, but it doesn't. The new growth did actually bloom. It has got some roots, but for me it's a relatively slow grower. It doesn't seem to want to go mad. But nonetheless, it's doing okay. It's not going to get a repot. It hasn't too long been done. But in my notes, all the plants that got potted with some cocoa husk in them have been marked for a repot at an appropriate time. If they've got a repot date that's quite a while ago and have got coconut husks, they're in red, because I want to do them as soon as possible. It's still got to wait for a practical, convenient time though. And then we've got my Nelly Isler, yellow, a new type, and it's a 2-bulb plant with a spike, and it was, I'm afraid it was Pretty Blooms must have. And I'm standing by that. I mean, they're gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Now whether I can grow this on, it is in a mix of, it's got some bark in with the mix here, so it's not staying soggy, which means I can keep reasonable control over it. But when it's finished blooming, for the size of the plant, the pot's far too big. So if once we get into the starting to chuck water on the plants, that will stay wet far too long and degrade the media and probably take the roots down. These are fussy, these things are. But Nelly Islers in theory should do better in this environment than they ever have in the other place, because it's cool and they like cool. So that's that one. I'll have to take some care with these because they've got, some of the spikes are tangled up. Now this is my not very good looking Sherry Baby. I got two plants, and the other one is a much better looking plant than this one, but this one's bloomed first. It has a massive spike with branches all over the place. It's going to produce a lot of blooms basically. And it's in the throes of opening them now. So they are just starting to open. I haven't detected any fragrance yet. Now this had some of the Welsh moss put on top of the pot because the roots were high and they weren't getting into the media. Now the oldest bulb here, the largest bulb, big plump bulb here, is the one with the spike. And it is already starting one new growth around the other side of the plant. Now I say the other side of the plant, there are two plants in there. The weak plant is the one pushing up a new growth. And if that can get some good roots going, I'll get some of these sheaths out of the way, which I'll do next time I water it because I need two hands, then the roots will be able to get down in the pot for that one, and it can stay in there to grow on. The other piece is the strong piece that's decided to push up the bloom spike, which is nearly touching the roof, but not quite. And this is why some plants end up on a shelf that's too bright, because their spike is so long. They can't go underneath anything because they'd hit the shelf above, so they have to go on the top shelf. Now there's only so many of those. Right, this has got a really useful tag, tells you exactly what it is. No good to man the beast. Now we do have a name for this now, and it's a very odd name. It's the one that's got a couple of distorted blooms, like this one, that just didn't open properly, and the next one, but then the rest opened fine. And the little branch over here is also just starting to open, and that's fine. So whatever was wrong with a couple of those blooms is okay now. It's not a strong plant. It's got 3 bulbs effectively, and it's the latest one that's pushed the spike up, but nonetheless it's got a root system and it's growing okay. It's got nice rich green leaves. There's not a spot in sight, although we do have one that bent, won't stand up. But yeah, it's doing okay, except for one thing that I've just spotted. Now all of these plants have been sprayed, but down in there is a little outbreak. I doubt if you can see it, and on the back of the leaf. So the fact that it's just there, that can have a spot treatment. And this is a contact and systemic. So we'll just give that bulb and its leaves a good soak. As I said with bugs, when you see them, deal with them. Don't leave them till next time, because they might go off that plant and move to the one next door because it's tastier. They don't necessarily stay on one plant. Right, now we're in trouble. This one is going to be tangled up against another spike. If I can just get it to loosen up. This is a very, very long spike and a pot that weighs nothing. One of the reasons it weighs nothing is it's bone dry, and I do have some water here, so let's get some water in there. That's the consequence of going around with the sprayer and not seeing inside the black pot to see what's actually going on in the pot. And this one's drying out a lot quicker than I would have expected. But then it's quite a large plant in quite a small pot. Now this has got no name, and it looks incredibly like tiger tail, but it's not. And I'll tell you why in a minute. I've got 2 that are almost identical, but they're not identical in as much as, okay, there's some variety in hybrids. Often the cross is redone and produces another lot, and then they're cloned. The better ones are cloned. Now this one is one of 2, and one of them has got quite a different coloured lip. So this one I'm classing as not tiger tail, but when the blooms first open, like this one just has, they are a lovely rich colour. Very, very attractive, and very, very large spike dangling all over the place. And yes, it should have been staked. I don't know whether I'd be able to stake it now. It would be worth a try, quite honestly, because it keeps falling over. Well, I've got a stake. If I can just, might get away with just threading that down through, preferably pointed end first. It's just reminded me of a film, it's quite an old film now, it's Zorro, but it was a remake, and the old guy in it, the old Zorro, is talking to the young guy, who is, what's his name, Ballesteros or whatever his name is. Catherine Zeta-Jones is in that one as well. Anyway, he's saying, you know, do you know how to use that thing? And he just goes, yeah, pointy end goes in other person. It just tickled me. Pointy end goes in other person. Definition of sword fighting. No, it's not going to stand up even with a stake. Let's try pushing the stake farther over and getting some clips out and clipping it to the stake instead of letting it wander. We might get it to stand up there. It's annoying me in as much as I have to rest it on another spike to stop it falling over, and that could be, you know, spoiling the effect of the other spike on the other plant. That's got it. It's just it's all about balance. It's all about where the weight of the spike is relative to the centre of the pot. And it looks like it might stay there now. Don't move. And then the other one, with the other spike, that's also heading towards the roof, is Tiger Tail. I doubt if you can read that because it's in very light pen. It hasn't had a proper label done yet. So this is the one that is deemed Tiger Tail, and the blooms on this one do match up with the pictures on the internet. Again, it's growing okay. It's doing okay. So there's adult scale on that leaf, but they're dead as a door now because I've only got to touch them and they come straight off. And there's no sign of any others lurking in the. They get down in the leaf joints and in the top of the bulbs. But it's growing okay. It's doing okay. It put out a reasonable root system. I would suggest the latest bulb here is a nice size, and it's the one with the spike on. Wherever the new growth comes out on this bulb, it's not going to have room in that pot. So in theory, the chances are that's on my list to repot. That list is quite large at the moment, I'm afraid. And then the last one on here is a Brassia. And this one had the let's split it up and sort of start it again in a new pot with plenty of room for the new growth. It had that done to it. And the latest growths on here may or may not bloom, but it's grown a good root system. It's got a nice lot of roots in the pot. I mean, this is a latest growth. That is big enough to bloom. Whether it will or not, I don't know. This growth is not very big. This one is quite a good size. These may or may not bloom. Being a Brassia, it's Vericosa Sea Breeze. They need good light, and these yellow leaves here are not as a consequence of too much light. They're a consequence of being on the oldest bulbs and they're dying off. Old bulbs drop their leaves. The new growths have all got nice coloured leaves. They're all about the right shade of green for a Brassia. And with all of those roots, if it doesn't bloom on these latest growths, it will on the next lot. So that's doing okay. And that is up on the top shelf for a good reason. It needs the light. Unfortunately, they're not classed as cool growers, so it might not do as well because of the lower temperatures. All of these Oncidium types here, these should be fine with the lower temps. They shouldn't object in any shape or form. They should be okay. Now, are you going to stand up this time? I do believe it is. But what I will do is I will put one of the other plants in front of it in the direction, if it's going to fall, it'll fall on this one. So it won't actually fall over, it'll just lean. So it can't go anywhere, in other words, it can only lean forward. And then we've got the Sherry Baby has now changed position and moved to the front of the shelf, where the roof is a little bit higher. Because it was virtually touching the roof. And then this is going to come down here because the shelf is a bit crowded, and that's going to come down here as well. So we've moved two to the blooming area down here. And I've got a spike to take off there, which is the Miltonia. No, we don't take the spike off because there's still a bud to open. And then the smaller spike down here has still got to open its buds as well. So that will definitely need a repot. So there we go, that was a look at a whole shelf. 3 shelves in fact, but it's a rack. So we've done that one now. Just going round, I forget half of what I have done. I'll have to go back because these are numbered. So I know how many I've done, and it gives them a sequence as well. But I'm not just going round methodically, I'm just doing stuff at random basically. But I know I've done the top shelf over there. I've done something there. I think I did that one. Now I've done that one. We've got the lower ones up in that corner there. Possibly the cooler, shadier ones tucked in there. And we've got the Cattleyas to do. And we've got all this lot as well. There's all these ones shoved on these lower shelves as well. So there's plenty more of this type to do. And spray down there out of the way. So there we go. For the rest of this week, I will probably get a Project Orchids video pre-recorded to post first thing Saturday morning, because I'm out Saturday, it's our Christmas lunch. So I won't be filming on Saturday, but I can still pre-record something to post. I can do that tomorrow sometime. And what I do for tomorrow, I don't know yet. I'll have a think. Maybe this Cymbidium will open. It's trying, but it hasn't made it yet. And Sunday will be a normal Sunday chat. So there we go. See you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Oh, always forget, if you're not subscribed, it would be nice if you did so, and don't forget the old thumbs up. It all helps. I've just put well, not a complaint, I've found a couple of YouTube videos that say if your application for monetization seems to be dragging its heels, a lot of people have reported this method of kickstarting it, which is basically on the screen, this is for the bonsai channel, you just send feedback. And basically it takes a screenshot of everything and it's in progress, yeah, so they can see you've complied and it's in progress. And you just query, you know, have you got everything you need? Is everything going okay, sort of thing? And the feedback gives them a jerk, sort of prompts them into perhaps moving you a bit nearer the front of the queue. But they also said it may or may not work, but many have reported that having done that, they got monetized within a few days of that feedback being sent. So we shall see, we shall see. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for dropping by.